Oh, it is cold. It's
Indeed.
Yeah, we're recording the tail end of January. It's cold. It's colder than it's been. I don't know if it is, but it just feels like it.
We've had
Um,
some cold days this winter, but not a ton. It got warm and now it's frigid again.
yeah, it's very weird. Maybe this is a new normal. Who knows? This has been
As long as there's precipitation, I'm hopeful for that. Like, I'll be okay with that. We need snow, we need rain.
right. That's true. I hear that a lot from New Mexicans, which makes sense because we live in the desert.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we are here today after winter break, where I hope you had a restful, enjoyable break. I hope our listeners have. I have in some ways.
I hope
Um, I
everybody did too. Mine was quite busy, so I wouldn't say it was restful, but it
feel
was
like
it
you're
was
doing that
nice.
wrong.
I try to relax, but this year just wasn't one of those. But we did a lot of fun things, so I still enjoyed my time. I am so obsessively, just crazy for Christmas. So there was a lot of activities involved around that, and my family, bless them, they went along for the ride. So very appreciative of that.
So you're appreciative that your family tolerated your love of Christmas?
Pretty much. I am the only one that has a maniacal love of Christmas, but at least I wasn't shot down, so that was really fun, really good times.
Yeah, I'm grateful your family didn't um
Yeah,
Scrooge your holiday season. I also love Christmas. I don't live with a group of Grinches. I
I
can't
wouldn't
think
call
of
them Grinch, just
it.
not maniacal like me. See, I take it I'm over the top, so
Christmas is over the top. Everything
yeah,
about
it can
Christmas is
be.
over the top. You put a fake or real tree in your house and you cover it with plastic and metal and glass nonsense. It's And then you put lights on it. And then you also put lights on the outside of your house and a big wreath, real, fake, whatever. There's also people that put giant inflatable things on their lawns.
It's
Food.
funny, the more you talked about all that, my smile kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because I did all of those things. Every single bit of those things. That's exactly what I did. But can I say that my ornaments are actually meaningful? Because every time I travel, every time I go somewhere new, I buy an ornament. So my tree tells a story of everywhere I've been. And I just love that because I get to tell people about it. And even if they don't really mean it, they seem to enjoy hearing about it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to call your family Grinches. I was just trying to go with the theme. There's not really a
Yep, yep.
lot of evil or anti-Christmas characters, besides
That's true.
Scrooge and the
That's true.
Grinch, unless
Mhm.
we go into Rankin and Bass level kind of stuff, but I think that's another podcast episode where I'm
Yep.
sure everyone listening is gonna love hearing my take on Rankin and Bass stop motion animated films.
Don't tempt me.
I Jamie, I think you might have to make your own podcast for that.
I
All
might have
Christmas
to.
I
There's enough podcasts already about Christmas, so I think I'm good.
I like that you already have that offhand, like, you already know of them. Like,
I do.
obviously, there's a
Mhm.
million Christmas podcasts that I'd listen to.
At least
Okay,
2.
2 is more than I ever would have imagined, but
Mhm.
that's fun. That's great. So, why are we here today? That's a great question that I'm posing for myself, and I'm going to answer because I wrote the answer. We are meeting today, we're recording today to talk about aha moments. As I titled it, My Aha Moment. So, according to Merriam-Webster, an aha moment, and Merriam-Webster is a dictionary for you younger people. A dictionary used to be a giant book filled with words, and now it's just a bunch of words on a specific internet page. So, an aha moment is a moment of sudden realization, inspiration, insight, recognition, or comprehension. So, it's really more of like a kind of a click, if you will, or a realization of something that may perhaps you need to pivot or change or reflect on, right? So, today's episode, Jamie and I are going to be discussing our aha moments in adult education. So, I because this was my idea, throwing spaghetti at the wall when we do these podcast episodes. I'm gonna go first. So I'm
Please
gonna
do.
yeah, and Jamie, please correct me if it just sounds like I'm reading off a page because that's basically what I'm doing, but we don't wanna bore people. So,
I'm sure you'll
yeah,
do great.
thank you. I really appreciate your confidence in me. Um, one aha moment that came to mind when prepping for this episode was back when I worked for a local program. I was an instructor and then I moved into a admin role. And I was really excited about it. I was excited to flex my new skill set. I also helped design my role, so I saw it as a unique opportunity to close some gaps in workflow, start new initiatives, and create in-house professional development because I saw that it's a really great opportunity. I've always been able to teach myself almost anything. I taught myself instructional design. I developed and like strengthened my teaching strategies. And I learned a lot about adult ed history, which helped my trajectory as a practitioner. So I really thought I could impart wisdom and create a shared foundational knowledge at our organization where we can build up our skills and new strategies and create targeted plans for growth. I was really full of myself. Like, I really thought I was like, this is it. This is where I'm going to change the field one tiny local program at a time. So through interactions with my colleagues and using our internal data, I decided that we needed the same foundational knowledge. So because instructors in adult ed have so many varied experiences, that we're all operating at different levels. So I created this Google Classroom with materials and resources. And I introduced it at our staff meeting to be like, okay, this is module. We're all going to get on the same page here. Multiple modules. The first module was all on three adult ed historical figures and their work. And actually, people were really excited about that one, especially the kind of radical educator. So I had some stuff on Miles Horton, a little bit on Paulo Freire. So even if people have heard of Freire, a lot of people haven't heard of Miles Horton, and I've mentioned him quite a few times on this podcast because he was a huge influential figure. That a big reason why we don't really know more about him is he didn't really write a lot. He was more of kind of like an organizer and getting like really interesting people to a place to do the things that they're best at. And he was a leader. He has, I mentioned years ago on this podcast, his autobiography, The Long Haul, really great. That was like I think that was one of the only things he actually wrote. And it was published, I think, a little before he died in the very early 90s. If you're interested, you could find really cheap copies online. So, anyway, it was kind of just about like what they did, what their big contributions to the field was, and really engaging with that of like what could we do or what are some things that are the same, what are different. And that got really people, like, really pumped, right? I was like, "Whoa, these are some really radical people that changed education. We wanna change education." It was, like, really great conversation and discussion, right? The next module was on learning theories, and then everyone just stopped doing the work. No one's that interested in learning theories except me, I guess, but I was pumped. Some of the instructors thought it was a waste of time to learn theory. And overall, it was just disappointing because I put so much work into the project. I really believed in it. And my aha moment from this experience was I didn't consult the instructors on what they wanted to learn and what they identified as their gaps, right? I decided for them that they needed to learn these things. It was a Google Classroom, it was self-paced, so it was asynchronous, and, they never had PD like that before. Asynchronous, self-paced kind of stuff is pretty new, and there was no incentive to continue. There was also, like, that huge culture change. So many things going on, like completely new PD from very different than what anyone's seen before, using technology piece, like going through Google Classroom. Some people were better at it than others. I wasn't prepared to give the support that some of these instructors needed. And there really wasn't an incentive to continue. It was like, okay, I looked at it. I did the first part. I was still their colleague. I wasn't their boss. So I couldn't, I couldn't order people to do this. But what I learned is that for adult learners, because we use the term adult learners, and most of the time we're talking about students, but adult learners is literally any adult that is learning, right? So, adult learners, you really got to involve them in the process of planning their learning. It is such an important tenet of adult learning theory that I know about, I've read about, I watched videos, I participated in PD about, but I wasn't applying it in action. Just knowing something does not mean that you're applying it to your work, right? I also learned that when you're designing workplace learning, you really got to take the organizational culture into consideration. You can't just tell everyone to do something radically different and not support that change, because that is frankly irresponsible and disrespectful of people's times and energies, because it takes energy to change courses, to do something different than you haven't done before. It wasn't in our culture to do in-house asynchronous PD. And this experience overall was just very sobering. And I keep that in mind of like not making assumptions that that they just need to know these things. It was not respectful of my colleagues. And that was big for me. So I kind of, put that into consideration.
And, ironically, I know exactly what you're talking about because I worked with you on this whole project for this local program. And so I remember being also surprised and disappointed that the momentum didn't stick because I really liked the course and personally felt like I had learned a lot in reviewing it and going through it myself. So I think that realization that you came to is a very similar one for me as well, in that there was never a point where we went and I was their boss, there was never a point where we went to the instructional staff and said, "This is what we're thinking of doing. Will you take a look and give us your feedback? And what do you think?" And getting that very important feedback before just moving forward with making it a required assignment. So, as you were talking about it, and even as we were prepping for this episode, it made me reflect kind of the same very important things about administration, what it means to be an administrator, what it means to deal with adult learners of any kind, because now we're both in a position where the adult learners that we deal with primarily are practitioners and not students. So it's the same principles that apply, like 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I think we do this informally in different ways, but it's really important to kind of reflect back on, especially when things don't go right. You should be reflecting on what happens when you work, reflecting on your own work and moving forward,
Mhm.
good and bad. So good, bad, neutral. I think especially with good stuff, it's like, okay, what went right? What was it? What was the secret sauce? When things go bad, why was it bad? And the thing I do want to hammer home with that anecdote is I don't blame the instructional staff at all. And it was very easy to just be like, oh, well, these people don't want to work or they don't want to learn. And if they don't wanna do something, you have to think about why they won't don't wanna do something. What is going on? And that's something you can communicate, like, really work with staff. I don't know how many, people in management positions, like, talk to their staff about, like, "Okay, what's going on? How can I make this better?" That's something also I didn't do. I didn't go back to them and be like, "Okay, what didn't work for you? How can we make this better? What do you think you need in your practice?" I didn't do that. And now, I'm in a very different position, but I'm trying to learn a lot from those experiences and talk to my staff of like, "Okay, what's working for you? What doesn't? How can we grow?" Because they're putting their time and energy into the work that we do, right? They're not tools that we use when we need them. I don't think anyone's ever, like, literally thought that about teachers of, like, tools, but
Right.
sometimes, like, when you're making decisions without the staff involved, why they need to do something, what is beneficial for the organization, you're inadvertently treating them like an object or a child or something that, like, you have control over, and I don't wanna manage like that. Wherever I end up in life and stuff like that, if that's part of my work, I don't want anyone to feel who working under me that they have to do what I say because I'm the boss. That's not great.
And in that
Um,
respect, having that reflective moment, what we call the aha moment, like having that is so useful, so powerful in helping us to grow.
yeah. So, Jamie, what's your aha moment?
I think, my aha moment, even though it's dealing more with our students, the student ambassadors, rather than practitioners, I feel like there's a lot of parallels between mine and yours because it also has to do with that principle of andragogy where you want to give your adult learner ownership in what they're doing. So, one of my biggest aha moments is more of like a string of instances that keep reinforcing this one major point for me as I work with student leaders. And that's if you give students the opportunity, they will rise to the occasion. I can think of a lot of instances when I told myself when I was in the classroom, so this was several years ago, but when I was in the classroom, I told myself that my students either weren't ready for something or they wouldn't want to do this or this is just not appropriate for the students to get involved in the planning. And so in effect, I was completely ignoring that andragogical principle that adults need to take ownership of their learning. I just kind of didn't take that into account. And I spent years simply following or creating a curriculum, even including things like field trips and long term projects that you would think students should be involved in the planning and the creative process of those things. I didn't do that. And even though there were times that I asked for student input, that was not the norm for me as a teacher. So now that I'm working with student leaders and not just working with the ambassadors, but now they're turning into peer leaders and peer coaches. I have just learned more and more that they play such a huge role in shaping our student leadership initiative because that's what it is. It's not just a student ambassador training, it is a whole initiative. And this shift in thinking really started with that 2023 student ambassador cohort because that was Leah's cohort. So many of you know Leah, formerly Leah Ellis, now Leah Lahan. She would reach out to me every few weeks after that training to ask what she could do. She wanted to be more involved and she felt like she wasn't doing enough. She would either email me or text me or call me and say, "What are we doing? What are we going to do? I feel like I'm doing nothing. How can we get more involved?" And it was that push that really helped build what our student ambassador program is. If she didn't have enough opportunities, she decided that she wanted to work with me to create more opportunities. And so from about early 2024, because they were trained in the fall of 2023, from 2024 until the next cohort was trained in 2025, Leah would give me consistent feedback about how the student ambassador training could be not just improved upon, but expanded. And so eventually we brought in 2 other student ambassadors from that cohort, Annalie Herrera and Zane Stevenson, and then 1 student ambassador from the 2022 cohort, the original one, Marisela Ortega, and all of us decided we wanted to take part in expanding this training. And the big question was, what is it that you wish you had learned during the student ambassador training? That was the big question. And so, taking that question, taking their feedback, their answers from that, we expanded it from a day and a half to 3 full days. And we're going to be doing the same thing with this upcoming training in February. We're going to have students from the 2025 cohort who are going to be now peer leaders who will help facilitate this training and who themselves are going to say, what do I wish I would have learned? I'm going to be meeting with them very soon because that's only about a month away now. So I'm going to be meeting with them very soon. We're going to take the slideshow that we had last year, we're going to change it up, improve upon it. The structure is going to be a little different. So I want their feedback from the get go. I have not made any changes to those slides yet. And it's because we want to make sure that they play a big role in that. And it was that same idea also that went into the student leadership webinars that happened in November and December of last year. Leah and I started with creating the webinars, fundraising, 2026 legislative session planning, leadership initiatives, and professional development. Those were the 4 topics. And even though we had parts that we facilitated, Leah and I, there were a lot of parts, the bulk of the time was spent giving our student ambassadors the opportunity to give feedback, give input. We were asking questions, we were having them shape things. In other words, they were coming up with fundraising ideas so that we can build our student leadership fund. They were coming up with their vision of the role of peer leader. They were going to build that because this role hasn't really formally existed yet. So they came up with that. They shared their professional development goals. All we did was share what's available, whether it's from Propel or from CoWabe or anything else. We were just trying to give them an idea of what professional development was available for them as they grow personally and professionally. And I got to hear what their goals were going to be. And I know that all of this is stronger because they took ownership of all of that. And so, because of that aha realization, even though it wasn't just one moment, it was like a string of moments for me. I'm able to move that student leadership initiative forward in ways I could have never imagined. And I've said this many times, and I think at this point it may sound like I'm bragging, but it really is the truth. No other state is doing what New Mexico is doing with student leaders. That is why we had more student ambassadors at Flood the Hill Days in Washington, D.C. than any other state. And we only had 4. That wasn't even a large group that we had in Washington, and yet we had more students than any others, and I think it goes back to that same fear or that same mental block where, as practitioners, we say, "Okay, we're in Washington, D.C., we're going to all these federal legislative offices, and this is something that's very serious, it's very important, and we don't know, quote unquote, we don't know if our students are able to take that on." And what I found in particular was that there's no way those meetings would have been as impactful without the students there. And I'll mention one of our student ambassadors, Arthur Sandoval by name, because the way that he conducted himself in particular during all those meetings was incredibly impressive. And I know that he and the other student ambassadors that were there left an imprint. They left a mark that practitioners just couldn't leave. And so, that aha moment just brings me to that question of why. Why aren't we involving our students more in these types of things? Why aren't we involving students more in their own growth and their own learning? And so I just want to continue doing that. I want to continue learning from and remembering that idea that if you give them the opportunity, they will rise to that occasion every single time. That is just going to help make our student leadership initiative better every single year. And so that is mine.
You talked about a lot of really great stuff. Especially, it is something to be proud of New Mexico really taking this student leadership project that, if I'm not mistaken, was introduced before Coed took it on. It was from Arizona, and then it really
Yes.
grew from there. But you took
Mhm.
something and really improved upon it, which is really incredible. Not everything has to be an original idea.
Absolutely not, and it's interesting that, coming from Arizona, it was shaped out of necessity. The state was going to defund adult education in their for state funding, completely defund it, and they decided that they needed to train their students to be able to talk to legislators, and they were able to change that. It did not get defunded. So, the fact that it was just even born out of necessity, I think, is very interesting, but then turned into something much bigger and now is done nationwide by Coed.
Yeah, it's really absolutely incredible. But there's two things that really stuck out at me in your story. One is you've mentioned Leah and Arthur really taking charge and taking ownership, and they, I guess I would say, volunteered. Like they were really insistent. Especially Leah was really insistent. Like she wants to be involved, right? And
Mhm.
that's always wonderful, and it's great when people self-identify of like, "I want to do this, I want to change." But that's not always the case with not
That's
just
true.
students, anybody. So I think what was really amazing about like what you shared is that it started from someone really hammering it home that this is really important and they want to be involved. And then you guys took that and turned it into giving other people opportunity to voice and to be involved. So it's also turning that into, oh, this is a space where you can do that. Like, because maybe someone's just, or at least maybe someone's just not speaking up because other people aren't. Or maybe it didn't occur to them. But giving people that space for their input and to grow is huge, and I think that that's, like, something really key here. Just because people aren't saying anything, and I feel like I'm reflecting on this because I've been in a couple meetings now this week with, like, a group of people, like, just because people are saying nothing does not mean they have nothing to say. We
Very
have to
true.
It's just how you're approaching, how you're communicating that we are listening and we're giving you, "Here's the podium." So, your aha moment is really like, "Okay, I'm gonna take this and transform." I'm going to give people the space and tell them before they tell me, "Oh, I want to be involved. Here's the space. This is how you can be involved, and we want to hear from you." And I think that is really huge.
I
That's
agree,
going to connect
definitely.
with people. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And yeah. So a lot of really wonderful nuggets there, but I think those were like the biggest takeaways of just like that's what clicked to me because that can be really taking your aha moment. It could be really transformed. It's really any group of, like, giving
Yeah,
people
yeah,
opportunity to take charge as well as change whatever it is, project activities to benefit them as well as you, because this is your work and not
mhm,
taking everything on yourself. I
right.
think that's an important lesson here of like, "Oh, you know what? We could actually get students involved and interested, and it gives me a little less work on one end, more work
That
another
too.
end." I know.
No, but you're absolutely right, and that old saying, "2 heads are better than 1, 4 heads are better than 2," all of that is really so true. I spent a lot of time just saying, "It's faster and easier to do it myself," and maybe in the short term it is, but then where's the growth there? Where's the learning there? Where's the other perspectives? That's so essential for growth and improvement to me. So I just love having this opportunity. Seriously, the best part of my job is working with the student leaders. And I love that. And you are so right. There are some students that are very quiet a lot of the time. But when they do speak, it's very clear that they weren't just tuning out or confused. They were listening, they were taking it all in, and it maybe took a little bit longer for them to respond, or they were trying to give other people, their time to talk, and I've certainly been that kind of person in meetings. where I haven't said much. I think that's even pretty common for me, but that doesn't mean that I'm not taking things in. So I'm really glad you brought that piece up too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So,
Mhm.
I'm sure no one's figured this out yet, but this is a shameless plug for our other project, My Adult Ed Story. My Adult Ed Story is a project where adult education practitioners can share their stories. And it's something that we're really trying to continue. So it's different than a podcast. There aren't episodes. It's a page on our website and in our social media where we take people's stories and we share them. And my aha moment is kind of a prompt. It's a prompt for people to share their stories. What is your aha moment in adult education? How has that changed what you do? How does that move you forward? Those are the questions. And so when we launch this episode, there's also going to be just instructions. And if you're interested, share either written or audio recording of your aha moment so that other people can hear your story, read your story, learn from you. And I think that's one of the biggest like pushes for me as a practitioner is like get other people to learn from each other. Make my job
Yeah.
easier.
And if you wanna see the stories that are already up, just go to www.nmadulted.org, the NMEA website, go to the podcast page. Right there on the podcast page, right at the top, you can get a link to the My Adult Ed story page, and you can read all of the fantastic stories that have been shared so far. Hopefully, that'll give you some inspiration as well. But we would absolutely love to hear your aha moments along with any other moments that you want to share with us.
Absolutely. Jamie, thank you for sharing yours again. Thank you for this opportunity so that we can have this little episode of just sharing. I think it's a great start to the new year.
I agree. Thank you, Nadia. And Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you again in March. Don't forget about My Adult Ed Story, a continuous project that highlights the lived experiences and origin stories of adult education and literacy practitioners. Each story is unique, and the more we learn about each other, the stronger our network becomes. Please consider sharing your written or audio recorded story with us. A link to the My Adult Ed Story page, as well as submission instructions, are included in this episode's description. We look forward to growing this collection.
Connect with Adult Ed, the NMEA podcast, is a project of the Propel Professional Learning System and is funded by the New Mexico Higher Education Department's Adult Education Division. Thank you for listening.